The sound of metal grinding against rock was unusual for Jake Monroe. He'd spent the better part of decades salvaging wrecks out in the Mojave Expanse, a semi-legal no-man's land between desert and decommissioned orbital lanes. But this sound, distant and guttural, was different. It wasn't just metal. It was something deeper, like something alive being force awake. Jake leaned against the hood of his battered crawler, wiping engine grease from his fingers with a rag that used to be white. His radio hissed softly on the dashboard, flickering between static and silence until it buzzed sharply with a coded pulse. It was an old signal format, pre-Union, probably illegal and certainly forgotten, but Jake recognized it. Help requested. Coordinates locked. Organic distress signature confirmed. Organic distress. He frowned. That wasn't a phrase you heard unless you were dealing with something living, or at least pretending to be. Most AI didn't use that kind of language. Whatever it wasn't automated. He glanced at the map feed. The signal came from a gulch about 2 clicks east, beyond the canyon where grounded orbital husks lay rusting like ancient sea creatures. He considered ignoring it. People got killed answering pings like that. But something about the tone, like it was calling him, not just broadcasting. It sounded like it knew who it was calling. Jake slid back into the crawler, firing up the thrusters with a low hum. The vehicle lurched forward, crunching gravel under reinforced treads as he turned toward the signal. The desert narrowed, ridges climbing like jagged teeth on either side. Shadows moved strangely here, stretching longer than they should, crawling ahead of the crawler like feelers. He scanned the terrain, but nothing moved. Still, the hair on his neck refused to settle. 10 minutes in, the signal went silent. Jake parked near the edge of the gulch, grabbing his toolkit and a portable scanner. The air was heavy, charged with static, like a storm had just passed. As he crested the ridge, he saw it. At first, he thought it was a geological formation, a crescent mass of obsidian and stone wrapped in roots. But then it shimmered faintly, metallic veins pulsing beneath its surface. A ship, or something like one, mostly buried, its hull warped and partially fused with the canyon floor. The structure was enormous, easily 3 times the size of a Union dropship. Its shape wasn't symmetrical. Organic curves merged with hardened alloy plates, as if someone had welded flesh to machine and called it a vessel. Jake approached slowly. His scanner stuttered. The readings fluctuated, showing bursts of high-density biological activity, then dropping to 0. He reached out and touched the surface. Warm. Breathing, maybe. The signal returned, no longer a mechanical beep, but a soft murmur. A voice. His name. Jake Monroe. He staggered back, toolkit clattering to the ground. The voice hadn't come from the scanner. It had come from inside his skull, as if the name had been folded into his brain like an echo of a long-lost memory. Jake looked around the clearing. No one. No footprints but his own. A panel on the side of the wreck groaned, the sound wet and mechanical at once. It peeled open, unfurling like the petals of a flower. Behind it was darkness, and then movement. A shape emerged, massive and coiled. At first, Jake thought it was a mechanical loading arm. But then it opened. A mouth. Not a human one. Not even a predator's. This was something else. Its shape was semicircular, lined with translucent, layered fangs that pulsed with faint light, like they were breathing independently. Inside the mouth, the walls undulated, slick and bioluminescent. He should have run. Instead, he took a step closer. The mouth didn't roar or strike. It spoke. We have met before. Jake felt his knees weaken. The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was familiar in the way dreams are familiar. Something half remembered, half feared. His breath caught in his throat. He couldn't place it. But the feeling wasn't new. I don't know you, he whispered, though his voice trembled with the weight of uncertainty. Not yet, it said. But you will. You were part of me once. The mouth slowly retreated, folding itself back into the hull. The light dimmed, but the ship or creature did not vanish. It waited, watching. Jake took several steps back, his mind racing. He had expected a downed freighter, maybe a stolen BiotechShip, maybe smugglers. But this wasn't a wreck. It was an invitation. He turned and stumbled back toward the crawler. Toolkit forgotten. He needed time. Time to think, to piece this together. But even as he reached the vehicle and slammed the door behind him, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't going to walk away. Not this time. The engine rumbled to life beneath him, but the sound felt distant. His pulse drummed louder in his ears. He sat motionless, staring out the viewport toward the ridge he'd just climbed down from. The silence was unbearable. Then the voice returned, soft but insistent. "You told me once. Long ago." That made no sense. Jake had never told anything like that. He would have remembered. Wouldn't he? He shut off the crawler. The sky above him was beginning to darken, clouds forming unnaturally fast. Thunder rumbled low, though no lightning followed, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to make a choice. He stepped out of the crawler and walked slowly back toward the ship. Behind him, the wind began to howl. Jake stood at the edge of the opening, his boots half sunk in the dust and gravel kicked up by the mouth's retraction. The alien vessel no longer made noise, but its silence felt designed, intentional, like a door cracked just enough to invite someone in. A test, maybe, or a trap. He gripped the handle of his flashlight and stepped closer. The hull's surface vibrated faintly beneath his hand, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was warm, not metallic warmth from residual heat, but a living warmth, faintly humid, almost animal. Against his better judgment, he pressed his palm fully against it, expecting pain or resistance. Instead, the surface yielded. A seam appeared. It wasn't visible so much as felt, a shift in texture, like skin reacting to touch. The entrance irised open, a perfect, dark ellipse rimmed with soft light. He hesitated only a moment before stepping through. Inside, the air changed. It was cooler, but not cold. The scent was strange, not foul, but alien, like petrichor laced with something sweet and fermented. The walls curved organically, ribbed in segments like the inside of a massive shell. Glowing veins webbed across the structure, pulsing in time with a rhythm Jake realized was matching his own heartbeat. He moved forward one careful step at a time. The floor was soft underfoot, pliant, not wet, but textured like padded muscle. Every few paces, the architecture changed subtly. The curves widened, colors shifted, and patterns in the bioluminescence grew more complex. The whole ship was alive, not just biologically fused, but sentient, aware of him. The whisper returned, not in his ears, but threaded through his thoughts. "Welcome back, Jake." He didn't answer aloud. There was no point. It wasn't hearing him. It was feeling him. A corridor branched left, narrowing into a tunnel half-lit, with amber glow. Jake followed it instinctively. He passed nodules in the walls that blinked like eyes, opening and closing with the cadence of breath. None of them stared. They just existed, watching, perhaps, but without threat. The deeper he went, the stronger the familiarity became, though he couldn't say why. He'd never seen anything like this before, and yet his body moved as if it remembered. The tunnel opened into a chamber unlike the others. Smooth, spherical, perfectly symmetrical. It was quiet here. Even the ambient pulses dimmed to a steady, slow throb. At the center stood a tall spire, part crystalline, part organic, rising from the floor like a tree trunk made of glass and bone. Around it hovered translucent membranes, their surfaces rippling with images that shifted as Jake approached. He stopped short, staring. One of the images showed a small boy, 7, maybe 8 years old, walking along a ridgeline at dusk. The terrain was unmistakably the Mojave. Jake leaned closer. The boy wore a faded green jacket. His breathing quickened. "That's me," he whispered. The image shifted. The boy looked up. Above him, a shadow. Something massive and curved, barely visible against the night sky. Then a flash of light. The image flickered out. Jake stepped back. That memory didn't exist in his mind. But the jacket, the place, the angle, it was real. The ship, or whatever was controlling it, was pulling something from inside him that even he didn't know was there. The voice returned, lower this time. Said almost, "You were taken, not harmed, joined." The words settled on him like ash. He didn't understand. Joined how? Why? A second image hovered into view. The same boy, now lying on a surface similar to the one beneath Jake's feet. Tendrils wrapped around his limbs, not restraining, more like linking. There was no fear in the boy's face, just calm, acceptance. Then the image blinked away. He felt cold, but not from the air. It was the kind of chill that came from internal displacement, like watching a stranger live your life. He rubbed his arms, trying to steady his thoughts. "Why me?" he asked, though he wasn't sure if the voice would answer. "Why would you take a child?" "To save one." The answer came not in words this time, but through sensation. The room dimmed, and another wave of memory, less a visual, more a feeling, pressed into his chest. Loneliness, fear, abandonment, then warmth. Unity, not family, but something deeper. Communion. He didn't want to believe it. Whatever had happened back then, if it had happened, was outside any frame of reference he could process. He was a mechanic, not a prophet. He rebuilt thrusters and patched reactor cores. He didn't merge with alien intelligences. And yet he was here. Jake exhaled, forcing his muscles to relax. He needed answers. Real ones. He looked up at the spire and placed both hands against it. Immediately, a surge rushed through him. Images, sensations, languages he didn't know he knew. Stars moving backward. A spiral galaxy turning red. Systems collapsing. A war he'd never heard of, fought by beings made of light and computation. Then, among them, the ship alone, damaged, fleeing, and inside it a presence. Old, fractured, waiting. You're not just a ship," he muttered. "No, I am the vessel, the mind, the memory, dying, unless repaired." Jake pulled his hands back, panting. His head throbbed from the influx. It wasn't just data. It was consciousness, pressed into him like a fingerprint onto soft clay. It was too much, too big. But beneath the enormity was something smaller, human-sized. "I don't know how to fix this," he said aloud, stepping back. "Yes, you do." A shape moved across the chamber floor. Sleek, metallic, shaped like a tool he'd used 1,000 times in his shop. It floated up beside him and hovered, as if waiting to be taken. Familiar, despite its alien design. It obeyed a logic he understood. He hesitated, then reached for it. The moment his fingers closed around the tool, it changed, rewriting itself slightly, matching the pattern of his grip, adjusting for his knowledge, his experience. Not teaching him, reflecting him. The spire pulsed. A panel opened at its base, revealing a tangled mass of ruptured conduits, dark fluid leaking like blood. Jake stepped forward without thinking. Each movement was automatic, driven more by instinct than thought. He cut into one of the damaged lines and grafted a filament from the tool directly into it. The spire lit up, not suddenly, not explosively, just a quiet thrum, steady and deep, like the breath of something immense waking from deep sleep. "You are more than mechanic," the voice said. "You are part of me, as I am part of you." Jake didn't answer. He kept working. It felt right, more right than anything had in years. With every fix, the room stabilized. The air lightened. The ship was healing. A screen opened nearby, another membrane. This one showed a star chart. Familiar quadrants, but distorted. A dark wave moved across it, devouring color and light. System after system blinked out behind it. Jake stared at the advancing line. "What is that?" The voice answered in a tone far colder than before. "The reason I fled." He swallowed. The map zoomed, showing Earth outlined in green. The wave, whatever it was still distant. But it was moving. He looked down at his hands, the alien tool still humming softly in his grip. "So what now?" "You return," it said. "Warn them. Prepare them." Jake's heart beat faster. "And you?" "I wait until called again." The chamber dimmed. The image faded. A panel opened behind him, revealing a corridor back the way he'd come. The scent of desert air reached him. The crawler rumbled across the desert floor as Jake kept his eyes on the horizon, hands tight on the controls. Dust curled up in his wake, curling like smoke in the still air. He hadn't spoken since leaving the ship, not to himself, not to the voice that had fallen silent the moment he crossed back into open daylight. The silence, once unbearable, now felt necessary. His mind was too full, saturated with impressions, visions, alien impulses still coiling in his gut like dormant lightning. He'd tried, more than once, to shake the memory of the spire's voice from his mind, but it was no longer just a memory. It was part of him now, woven into his thoughts like a second layer of consciousness. The ship hadn't just spoken to him. It had planted something inside him, not physically, something deeper, and it was waking up. 2 hours out from the canyon, the outpost came into view, a scatter of metal shelters, antennas, and solar panels clinging to the desert like barnacles on rusted steel. Jake Dunn Station, named half-jokingly after himself when he'd first helped assemble it with a few rogue salvagers trying to stay clear of Union scans. Now it served as a waypoint for fringe mechanics, scavengers, and those looking to stay out of sight. Home, at least in the loosest sense of the word. Jake rolled the crawler into the bay, the auto-locks hissing as they engaged. He climbed out, legs stiff, and made straight for the central dome, barely acknowledging the 2 other salvagers lounging by the comms array. "Yo, Jake, you finally pulled that Union freighter out of the ravine," one of them called. He didn't answer. Inside the dome, the lights flickered as the power grid adjusted to the late-day draw. Jake dropped into his seat at the workbench and powered up his interface. His fingers hovered over the console. He wasn't here to rest. He needed data, archived star maps, anomaly reports, pre-Union encryption logs, anything that could verify what the ship had shown him. The wave, the systems going dark. It couldn't have been metaphorical. He felt the fear in that vessel's mind, the urgency. He started pulling files, old beacon pings, discarded Union distress calls, navigation anomalies. The more he compiled, the more patterns began to form. Minor at first, discrepancies in gravity, well, readings, stars losing mass without explanation, entire outposts blinking out a Union registry, reported as decommissioned, but no evacuation records logged. Something was eating the stars. He sat back, breath shallow. The map he now displayed wasn't complete, but it mirrored what the ship had shown him. The black wave was real, slow, yes, but moving, and if the projections held, Earth sat directly in its path within a few standard cycles. Footsteps sounded behind him. Jake didn't turn. "Not now, Kella." The woman stopped just behind his chair. "That obvious, huh?" she said, voice light but edged with concern. "Heard you came in without a word. Didn't even nod to Baker." Jake sighed. "I saw something out there." "Something new or something dangerous?" "Both." He turned to look at her. Kalla's dark eyes narrowed slightly as she read the exhaustion and the fear in his face. "Talk," she said. One word. No tolerance for evasion. That was why he trusted her. Jake hesitated. "Then there's a ship. Not Union. Not like anything in the registry. It's alive. Buried in the gulch." Kalla didn't laugh. That was why he trusted her even more. "Alien?" Jake nodded slowly. "More than alien. Ancient. A-mind. It's not just damaged. It's hiding. From something worse." Kalla folded her arms, watching him carefully. "Worse how?" Jake tapped the screen, showing her the simulated path of the void wave. "This thing is sweeping across systems, eating them, maybe. The ship, whatever it was, showed me it, said it ran from it, that it tried to warn others, but no one believed." Kalla absorbed the data silently, eyes scanning the maps. "So why you—" Jake didn't answer right away. "It said I was part of it, that we'd met before." She blinked. "Have you?" He looked away. "I don't know. Maybe as a kid. There's this gap. Memories I never could place. I always thought it was just the trauma of losing my family out here. But maybe it was something else." He stood abruptly, beginning to pace. "I don't even know what's real anymore, Kalla, but this wave is coming." She nodded. "And the Union won't listen to a fringe mechanic with no documentation." Jake's mouth tightened. Exactly. Calla leaned on the bench. So what's the plan? Jake pulled up another window. The ship isn't just hiding. It's repairing itself. Slowly. But it needs help. I got it started, but it's not enough. If we can fix it, maybe it can move. Maybe it can warn someone higher up. Or fight. Calla raised an eyebrow. You think it a weapon? I think it's the only thing that's seen what's coming and survived. A heavy silence settled between them. Then she nodded once. I'll get my gear. Jake gave her a grateful look. You're in? She cracked a small grin. You think I'm passing up the chance to poke around an alien BiotechShip with a personality disorder? Besides, someone's got to keep your twitchy hands from blowing us both up. Jake chuckled. The sound hollow but real. Thanks, Calla. They moved quickly after that. He uploaded the schematics he'd absorbed from the ship into his portable drive. Calla prepped her exokit and neural sync gear. They stocked up on environmental stabilizers, plasma cutters, and a small AI drone for mapping interior changes in the ship's structure. Before they departed, Jake stood for a long time at the edge of the outpost, watching the low sun sink behind the dunes. He could feel it again, the whisper at the back of his mind. The ship wasn't calling him now, but it was aware of him, like a lighthouse seeing the boat before it crests the waves. Calla joined him, slinging her pack over her shoulder. You good? She asked. No, Jake said honestly, but I'm ready. They mounted the crawler and turned it back toward the canyon, engines flaring against the dusk. Behind them, Jake Dunn's station faded into shadow. Ahead, the alien mind waited, silent and wounded. And far above them, in the dark folds between stars, something vast and hungering stirred. The canyon looked different now, not because it had physically changed, though it had, subtly, but because Jake and Calla no longer approached it with skepticism. Now they came with intent. A heavy understanding hung in the air, woven with the dry heat and the rising buzz of static that prickled along their skin the closer they drove toward the gaping curve of Earth. The mouth had closed again, no longer yawning wide like a wound. But even sealed, the alien ship pulsed faintly beneath the surface, like the breath of something asleep just under the dirt. Jake cut the engine and stepped out. No wind stirred. No bird circled above. The silence was ceremonial. Calla crouched beside the crawler, pulling out her scanner. The reading spiked in erratic rhythms, confirming what Jake had felt since waking that morning. An increase in energy output. The ship was recharging. He didn't wait. As he approached the wall of rock, it reacted. First with subtle tremor, then with a hiss, and finally, like a sigh of recognition, the surface folded inward. The entrance bloomed open, moist light curling from within. Jake stepped through without hesitation, Calla at his heels. Inside, the ship was more awake. Where once the walls had simply pulsed with dim biolight, now they glowed, not with intensity, but with definition. Patterns curled through the organic corridors like living circuits. The air, too, had changed. It was clearer now, less humid, less alien. The path unfolded before them, adjusting with every step. Each turn calibrated to lead them somewhere very specific. The ship was guiding them. Jake glanced at Calla. She was focused, scanning everything, recording with her shoulder drone, and occasionally murmuring notes into her comms unit. He could see all warring with discipline in her expression. What do you feel? She asked, not stopping. Jake hesitated, like it's been dreaming of this moment. They reached the spire chamber again, but it had evolved. No longer a hushed core of stillness. The space now shimmered with layers of activity. Threads of semi-transparent material wove through the air like data streams, pulsating with alien script and shifting geometries. The spire stood taller, crystalline sections now exposed like veins under peeled skin. Then the voice returned, clearer than ever, not whispering this time, but speaking. You brought another? Calla stiffened. Jake stepped forward. She's here to help. Like I did. The light above them dimmed briefly. A form began to coalesce above the spire, three-dimensional, projected not from machinery but from memory. A humanoid silhouette, faceless and shifting. I remember you, it said to Jake. You were young, small. You held the fracture in my core with your hands. You stayed when others ran. Jake's breath caught. I was here before. Yes, briefly. Before they found you and took you away. Before they made you forget. Calla looked between them, her brow furrowed. Who's they? The ones who map, the voice replied. Cartographers of life. Your union calls them explorers. But they do not explore. They erase. They cleanse. They study only what does not resist. Jake frowned. The wave. A pause. No. The wave comes from beyond even them. A hunger deepened fear. The ones who map fled from it. Same as I, but unlike me, they sought to contain what they could not comprehend. You were their sample, Jake. Jake staggered back, nausea blooming in his gut. What does that mean? You are not only human. You are hybrid. Biocode stitched into your cells. My code. Calla's voice was barely a whisper. You're part of the ship? Jake's head reeled. I never asked for that. No, the voice said gently. But you accepted it. When you touched me as a child, we bonded, not to control, to survive. You saved me. Now I return the gift. A panel opened behind the spire, revealing a second chamber. Inside flowed a central node, glowing faintly, flickering with distress. This is my core memory. It is decaying. If I lose it, I cease to be. Jake stepped forward, understanding blooming without instruction. You want me to restore it. Calla reached out to stop him, but he held her gaze. It's the only way. Inside the chamber. The moment he touched the node, a rush of sensation flooded his senses. Millennia of flight, of war, of escape. He saw civilizations rise and fall, watched stars die screaming, and through it all, the same force hunting, erasing, swallowing light like it was breath. The wave was not just a phenomenon. It was an intelligence. Cold, vast, formless. It consumed not from malice, but from necessity. It needed light to survive, and it was coming. When he withdrew, he nearly collapsed. Calla caught him. I saw it, he said, voice hoarse. It doesn't stop. It doesn't negotiate. We have maybe 10 years before it reaches Earth. Calla's face had gone pale. Then we can't go through the Union. They'll debate, delay. We need to show them, force the truth into the open. Jake nodded. The ship can fly? Partially, the voice said. If given your mind, you understand its patterns. You can direct its repairs. Jake looked down at his hands, then at the spire. What happens to me, you will live. Change, but not loss. He turned to Calla. You're not doing this alone, she said, before he could speak. I came this far. I'm seeing it through. You bond with the ship. I'll handle the rest. Spread the word. Show the galaxy what's coming. Jake stepped back into the node chamber. He closed his eyes. As his hand connected, something gave, an invisible membrane tearing, and suddenly his consciousness expanded outward, not painfully, not violently, just bigger. He felt the ship breathe through him, knew the corridors like bone, understood its pain, its loneliness, and, most importantly, how to fix it. When he opened his eyes again, the lights had changed, brighter, harmonized. The ship sang, a low-frequency hum that resonated with his pulse. Calla watched him, awe and worry mingling in her eyes. Jake! He smiled faintly. Still me? Then let's go tell the stars what's coming. As they made their way back to the crawler, the ship's core now pulsing with renewed strength behind them, the desert wind finally stirred. And overhead, somewhere in the space between stars, the hunger kept moving. But now, something had stirred against it. Not a fleet, not a government, just one human, and the living mind of a forgotten god.